Welcome to episode 309 of Sports Geek as we kick off 2022. Chatting with Gold Coast Titans CEO Steve Mitchell.
Welcome to Sports Geek, the podcast built for sports digital and sports business professionals. And now, here's your host who wants you to follow Gravitas as your favorite esports team, Sean Callanan.
Thanks, DJ Joel. Yes, my name is Sean Callanan, and I'm back for another year of podcasting. Year 9 started in 2013. Year 9 of the podcast, and yes, I do want you to follow my esports team, Gravitas. They've kicked off for another year. I'll talk about that after my chat with Steve Mitchell, the CEO of the Gold Coast Titans, as part of our CEO series. Before I get into it, what are the plans for 2022? Hopefully, I can get back on a regular schedule from a podcasting point of view. This has been the first couple of weeks that I've actually had guests unfortunately cancelled due to COVID. So hopefully the scheduling and hopefully people do recover. The plan is to get to at least 30 episodes for 2022. So please, if there's someone that you work with or have worked with or someone that you admire in the scene that's doing really great things, whether it be in sports, digital, in marketing, in technology around the space, where they work in a team, they work at stadium side, or they're doing some great stuff at a league, please let me know. Reach out, Sean at sportsgeekhq.com. And then also, hopefully, we'll be kicking off later in a few months' time, the second series of Sports Geek Amplify. So again, if you have some suggestions of some great sports tech startups and vendors that are into this, that are helping you deliver what you need to deliver, and you think more people should know about them, that's exactly what Sports Geek Amplify is for. So please reach out, let me know, tell them that you've listened to the podcast and you listened to last season's version of Sports Geek Amplify. I'd love to hear from you. The Sports Geek News will be relaunched. I think I'm going to go with fortnightly at the moment, just with the current bandwidth. So it'll be fortnightly. I'm going to kick it off. You should have one in your inbox already. And I think that's going to be about it. I want to get stuck into my chat with Steve Mitchell, the CEO of the Titans. Thank you very much to everyone who is a Patreon subscriber. You can become a Patreon subscriber by going to sportsgeekhq.com/Patreon. And you can donate however you might like, whether it be as an individual or as a business. Like I said, I very much appreciate the people who are Patreon subscribers. Now, here is my chat with the CEO of the Gold Coast Titans from the NRL, the National Rugby League, here in Australia, Steve Mitchell. Very happy to welcome Steve Mitchell, the CEO of the Gold Coast Titans. Steve, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, Sean. How are you?
I'm good, thanks, mate. What I normally do in starting with conversation with anybody is ask them how they got their start in the world of sports. What was your first foray into the world of sports?
I was really fortunate. My background's in media. I was at News for some time and then 7 and the 10 Network. And I moved to regional Queensland quite young to work in TV. But we still... I love rugby league. We come from a rugby league family, but I was in and around the sport, and the Cowboys had sort of started up there, and I was involved with the media deals in and around the club at the time, but never ever thought I'd end up working in sport. But I was approached at the back end of a period of time where I was running 7 in North Queensland by the then commercial manager of the Cowboys to come across and potentially look at picking up the Cowboys general manager commercial role. And I nearly knocked it back. I was heading back to Brisbane with News Corp, and I thought I'd take the role. At the time, I had a son who had just finished high school. He'd been seconded to Parramatta, was at Parramatta for 4 years. I joined the Cowboys and fell in love with the work. Saw a lot of synergies between the media business and commercial sport or commercialising sport, and the opportunities that were there, and had an opportunity to really have 5 wonderful years at the Cowboys where we rebuilt the commercial auspice of the business and went through a lot of on-field success too, the rebuild of the squad and the culture and the players, the play group that came through, ultimately winning that grand final in 2015. So I fell in love with the industry and the sport, and then moved from there
So on that, I just wanted to, because that's when we first crossed paths, when you're at the Cowboys, and it's real. What I find really interesting is the different ways people come in and different experience. So you had a strong media background, working in TV and in radio and news. Like again, what was the initial learnings going into sport from that background? Like, what were the things you had to learn, and what were some of the things you had to unlearn? Because sport is a very unique business from a commercial point of view.
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think what it was, I predominantly worked commercial side of media, so it was about P&L side of a media business, how the revenues come in, what your cost base is, and how you end up running it so that it's a good business. And that's where I think, and a lot of it's about content, right? So media was about building content, and a lot of sport is about, ultimately we're a content provider or a content producer, and that's our IP. So when I came into the Cowboys, you could see where the organisation was spending a lot of money, and in areas whereby we could fine tune or bring services in-house, build our own content, do it more efficiently, do it at a larger scale, and just get a better return on our investment. So there were a couple of really easy tweaks in the first 12 months that really gave us some significant commercial upside. What I did need to become conscious of at that point in time is the sport within a high-performance environment with athletes that are coming through that are spending, a large chunk of what is ultimately their entire careers in that space. What that cultural piece looks like internally there, what the relationships are like, who you're looking for, what characteristics you're looking for, value sets, purpose, that sort of thing. And that was. I didn't bring that from media. I learned that when I got into the sporting world.
Yep. And so you're at the Cowboys, and then you jumped codes. For our US listeners, Australia has multiple football codes. Rugby has 2 in rugby league and rugby union. And you worked in a commercial role at the Rebels down here in Melbourne. What were some of the differences between going from the league, rugby league and NRL to going to union and working one in a town, my hometown Melbourne, which is very much an AFL town, which is one of the other codes that we talk about when we talk about the Code Wars. But what was it like going from rugby league to rugby union?
Yeah, I'll be forever grateful around that experience. Melbourne's an extraordinary city to work in. I worked for a man who was privately owned, the Rebels at the time, New Zealand entrepreneur who was passionate about the game, which is not unusual. A lot of businessmen passionate about the game and get involved. Was really having a crack at making that franchise work in Melbourne. Melbourne's an AFL town, a footy town. So you're in a non-traditional market where you're taking a product to market. So you've got to innovate and you've got to be pretty savvy around the way you do the job. The networking, the time I spent in the market, and the lessons I learned, and some of the cross-pollination between codes and some of the people I met was some of the greatest learnings of my career. Melbourne was phenomenal. And the other part about rugby union in Melbourne, and it's a story that's never quite been told, but we started doing a brand DNA piece on the club so we could tell our story a little bit more. And if we started to eke back and really do some research on rugby union in Melbourne, it goes back to the very foundation of the AFL itself, where T.W. Wills went to rugby college in England, came back as a cricket player, and then basically evolved AFL for a sport that was for cricketers that were keeping fit over winter. But a lot of that was rugby based stuff, and he changed the tackle technique because he thought the ground in Victoria was too hard for a rugby tackle. And I was finding all these photos and all this history of rugby union in Melbourne. Half the Wallaby side was based in Melbourne prior to World War II. Weary Dunlop was the first Wallaby to come out of Melbourne, came through the University of Melbourne and basically worked his way all the way through as a student through to a spot in the Wallabies until he unfortunately went away to his Burma Railway experience. Has a rich history in Melbourne, and start telling that story, and Melburnians start to buy in and understand they're all part of the same gene pool. So we had some great success down there. It was great fun. And the beauty about rugby also is that you get to work internationally. We were in Japan and South Africa and Argentina and often in New Zealand. So it was truly global. It was a great time.
Yep. So you've had a couple of, so from there you had a couple of commercial roles, but then you stepped into the CEO seat, and in this case, moving into touch football, which is again back to league, but more of a participation based role, moving away from clubland. What were a couple of lessons? First of all, making that step up. Was it something you were looking to do? Your own career, trying to be a CEO, and that was a good opportunity. But then also moving from a club based system, which had been in for nearly 10 years, to moving to a participation sport and a grassroots sport and sort of supporting the pro scene. So what was it like, moving to touch football?
Yeah, always a bridesmaid, never the bride. I'd been the reason I left the Cows is I'd missed the CEO's role to Greg Tonnis. I moved to Melbourne for that, and then was lucky enough I was basically fulfilling a quasi CEO role down there. We had Baden Stevenson, who's now the CEO, running footy. I was running the club, and the owner was basically looking after the totality of the business. I was approached by the chair of Touch Football Australia and Todd Greenberg at the time to move back to Sydney to take up the CEO's role of Touch Football Australia, and that was about the NRL Rugby League alliance with Touch Football. Touch Football has around 750,000 participants across the term of a year, about 280,000 consistent registered participants across the 8 states, 8 territories in Australia. It's really quite extraordinary, and this partnership that's been linked between both Rugby League and Touch Football to just give you a greater community and more people to speak to was strategically very, 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 very bright and a really good position for both sports. But my job, I was excited about. One, I wanted to drive the business, but the second part was touch footy. I knew the size of the participation and grassroots stuff. I'd never seen the elite part. And I went up to an event called the Elite 8 at Coffs Harbour, which was some of the best players in the country or the world, and I was watching what these guys are doing, the guys and girls are doing, and we had a live feed on it, some close shots, and we're actually pushing it out. And I was getting the guys, because of my broadcast background, to tighten up the shots on some of the action that was happening, and I was just blown away with the athleticism, the speed, and some of the passing and some of the lines I were running. And I went back to Todd Greenberg and said, Todd, this is a broadcast sport, mate. This is what I've just seen at Coffs Harbour, even though Elite 8 didn't really have any brand resonation. This is phenomenal. I said, I can align these pods that sit in different areas with NRL clubs and then bring them forward and give them on game day, because I knew the Rugby League game day piece back, and I knew all of the 16 CEOs. So it was about aligning female and male elite level touch sides with these clubs and having them to run out as curtain raisers. And we modified the pitch, did some work with Fox on their secondary broad content schedule, and bang, away we went. So we had the NRL Touch Premiership, and at one point I think we had 144 games get away in one season. It was just quite extraordinary. So exposure for the sport went through the roof, participation went through the roof. Brands were very excited about it, and a lot of the women that came through that are now playing in the NRLW. They move across, do tackle safe programs now. Obviously, put a little bit of size on, but there's nothing like touch football to teach you how to move a ball at speed. And these kids learn to make decisions under complete anaerobic stress because they just run they don't stop. And some of the athletes that it produces are just quite extraordinary, both male and female. And we'll continue to see that. But it was an exciting time. But I really wanted to get back into rugby league, but it was a wonderful journey.
I mean, it's a terrific story, because it was also at a time when a lot of sports were trying to come up with different versions of their sport to be a Big Bash T20 condensed version. When, as you saw it, you went in there, had a look at the product and said, well, we don't need to redesign anything. This is the product. We've just got to market it well and position it well and put it in front of the right fans. And implement it to give that pathway from grassroots. And the fact now it's got that connectivity to the pro scene is of great benefit.
Yeah, I think the big part was the ability to actually diversify your base. I remember talking to Phil Gardner in Newcastle when we were putting a Newcastle side in, and he said, Steve, I just want every 7-year-old girl in regional Queensland to think one day she can be a Knight. She can play at home at McDonald Jones Stadium as a Knights player and be that touch or be a contact. And I thought that, in a summary, that was it. And we ended up having these we were getting big groups of females coming to the games, rugby league games, early to watch touch football. So you could see the diversification of audience immediately, and it just gave us this wonderful new community that attached to the sport. Different offering, excitement, and youth. It drove our demographics right into that youth market. So we'd throw up a highlights reel, and we get 1.5 million views on Facebook within 3 days. It was just as the kids watching it on devices. It was just profound, and that's still the case with the sport. It's got extraordinary participation numbers, great aspects around the sport, and feeds into rugby league really, really well. We can probably still do a fair bit more to bring that to life, but it's come a long way, that's for sure.
Yeah, I mean, the studies show, and I was talking to Dino Di Pierdomenico, like if you get a participant is more likely to become a fan. So getting, that point of getting that 70-year-old playing and wanting to be a Knight or wanting to be a Titan, the fact that they've played, they're more likely to be sticky later in life and become a lifelong fan. So, all the studies say if you're getting kids and people playing, then they will convert. And so there's definitely that long tail. Like you're already seeing the bump, but that longer tail of what's it look like in 10, 15, 20 years' time of all these kids coming through and playing, and then all of these, women having opportunities to play and play further. It's going to be terrific for all the sports that are putting effort into the space. So from that role, like you said, you're encouraged to get back into league. How did you come about to be the Gold Coast Titans CEO? What was the process for you to be able to get that role?
Well, I was doing the Gold Coast with the first of our NRL touch size. So the Gold Coast is this 40, maybe 45 now year old traditional sort of touch heartland where it sort of started out of Sydney. So I was doing a bit of work up here, but I knew Graham Annesley quite well from my time in and around the NRL, and I knew Dennis Watt. Dennis Watt's the current chair. He was the ex-chair of the Brisbane Broncos, and we had done some work together and crossed paths quite a bit when I was at the Cowboys. And Graham was heading back. The club itself had gone into private ownership. The Frizzels and the Kellys had gone to the NRL and taken the club back into private hands, which has been extraordinary for the organisation. And Dennis was good enough to sort of tap me on the shoulder and go, mate, we need someone to really head this up. And, we're heading in a direction. This is what the owners would like. This is what their purpose is and where they're going. Would you be interested? And I jumped in the car and just drove straight here.
Yep. Definitely. I mean, like you said, there's a limited amount of these jobs. And if you want to put your hand up for one, that's what you've got to do. Explain for the people who don't know, both maybe people here in Australia that don't understand Gold Coast, both as a town but as a sports town. But I'm sure there's a bunch of people listening in the US and Europe that don't know about the Gold Coast. Tell us a little bit about Gold Coast as a region, and then also, I guess, its history from a sports town and sporting teams in the region.
Yeah, it's a really good question. It has had a history of being a professional sporting franchise graveyard to some degree, where there's this common chatter, or has been for the last 15, 20 years, around the fact that a sporting side can't make itself work or sustainable in the Gold Coast because of the amount of options that are here. One, there's 40 odd kilometres of beautiful, pristine beach, and it's a tourist capital of Queensland and a large part of Australia. So there's a lot of options on the coast, and people, sport's not at the top of that list, which I fundamentally disagree with. When I got here, beyond the theme parks and beyond the beach, you have a community now that's nearly mid-sixes, so 650 odd thousand people on the Gold Coast, a diversified economic base where you've got education, health, multiple industries. It's an hour from Brisbane, an airport now that's running. There's 30,000 people a day through it. International flights. It's got everything that sits there to actually make the economics work. Justin Holbrook, who says it perfectly, is our coach. He goes, if you have to give them a reason to come, you give them the reason to come, and they turn up in their droves, and that's absolutely right, and that's what we're seeing now. And if you don't give them a reason to show up, then they've got plenty of other things they can do. what I've found with the coast too is that there's with the rugby leagues, in the box seat, and it's a traditional sport here. Tweed Seagulls switched from a rugby union team to a rugby league team in the second year that rugby league was in Australia, 1909. So there's been rugby league's been played on the Gold Coast for well over 100 years. Once you step back and you go into the community, the people that live here, there's about 13,500 registered participants between Logan and Lismore. There's the most mature females competition in the country here. We've got a Titans schools competition that we run over 14 weeks. We had 1,700 kids in that last year, 600 girls. So the sport on the Gold Coast is in really, really good shape. And there's history. A lot of those clubs go back a long way. I've got one of the reasons why the Gold Coast is so attractive to me. My great-grandfather settled here, had a farm down at Currumbin, and his son, my grandfather, played for Currumbin. I've got a photo of him playing for the local side down here in 1929, so the better part of, not quite 100 years ago, but nearly 100 years ago. So there's a lot of history that we can lean back on, which gives you that tribalism. The Suns are in a non-traditional market, and that takes time, and a lot of money invested. It's a bit like being a rugby union in Victoria.
Yep.
You're in a different battle. But if you've got the DNA, if you connect well with grassroots, you do a lot of work in that community, bringing genuine pathways through for their kids, really good relationships with local clubland, and spend your time walking the hills and saying hello to people and listening. To your point earlier, they come to games, so they buy merch and they support you. If you're honest and you're really working hard, and you're working hard around their community, around their kids, and their opportunity to actually play on the national stage, but they jump, they're on board. So the Gold Coast is responding to us really, really strongly at the moment. We got through that final last year with the Chooks, and I was still getting text messages for 4 weeks late. It was just quite extraordinary. It's been a lot of latent support sitting on the ground waiting for some success for some time, and that's what we're here for. That's what we're here to do.
Yeah, I was chatting to Jeff Ribel at the Cowboys, and he talks so much about being embedded in the community and helping the community care at the Cowboys. And you would have seen that at Cowboys, it is the same thing for you at the Titans. Like, it's when you say, make them care, it's not just, we're winning, we're going to turn up. It's they see what you're doing in the community, they see what you're doing in schools, and you're giving, that's more, it's not just winning to give them a reason to turn up. It's that connection to say, yeah, I'm proud of my team. This is what they're doing around the community.
Yeah, I actually saw almost the same set of circumstances with both clubs at a point in time. Once you lose a connection with your grassroots, and once you lose connection with your community, and you act like you're a retail shopfront, and you're basically here just to put on one piece, and that's a high performance broadcast piece, then everything else that sits underneath you basically starts to dilute and move away. The only reason we open the doors to trade is because of the community that sits around us. They're the guys that buy, they watch, they turn up, they come to the games, they share. They're the ones that have the aspirations they want to watch. So the more you invest back into that community, the people that sit in and around the club, the more, regardless of whether you're successful or not, you need to be honest though. You can't not turn up. As long as you can lose, and they'll still support you. But that reinvestment back in the community ultimately turned my experience 12 years ago, 15 years ago, it turned the whole tone around the Cowboys. It did a 180 because they were back into the community. They showed they cared. And it stands true to be said. The Titans, I haven't seen, it's quite profound the amount of time that the player group and the community staff spend in the community pushing back. But it's our obligation and it's a responsibility of ours to make happen.
And is that part of you venturing into new sports, like looking at netball? We're seeing a few sports looking at being multi-sport and more embracing of other sports and learning new sports. Is that part of why the Titans are moving into netball?
Yeah, it really is, Sean. It's about the first thing that we want to do is define our purpose on the Gold Coast. And that took us a little bit of time talking with all of our stakeholders and our owners and people inside the business. But ultimately, and a lot of it came through Justin and the play group, ultimately the first part of that was making our communities proud. And those communities could be our commercial community, our First Nations community, Pacific, our rugby league, education. But there was netball community on the Gold Coast. It's got 11,500 registered players that they have high aspirations. They want to see their kids go through and play on the national stage. We've got an organisation that's in play that's put frameworks together around pathways, high performance, cultural pieces, IP, everything that we need. My relationship with Netball Queensland, one of the ladies that works up there, Demelza Fellows, and I work together in Melbourne. So it was an opportunity to really bring that to life and get them under this, make them Titans, and then give those guys the opportunity to actually be here, play for a local association, get through, play for your club, and then go through a state level. And ultimately, we want to push through to a super netball level. So that's absolutely about that. That's about bringing a whole new community to life and on board with us. And
recently you released Building Titans, your 2030 roadmap. What was the genesis of that? What was the kickoff point with that? Was that did it come from a conversation with the owners? Was it needing that North Star to head towards? What kicked that off?
Yeah, it's a good question. There was Mel Meninga arrived just before I arrived at the club, and Mel started to do some really good work with value sets and behaviours around that value set, and what we were all trying to align ourselves to. So we were all basically we had the same behavioural set. And we all believed in the same thing, where we were going to go. And that had, for about 12 months, 18 months, that had a really good effect on the way how we were recruiting, the type of person we were bringing in the business, the type of person we were bringing in from an administration point of view. And just it was really starting to turn the dial. And then it became apparent that we needed to actually take that a step further and go, okay, what's our overall purpose, our value set that sits below that, the behavioural core that we want to see that sits beside that, and then ultimately, what are we going to do? The owners had been brave enough to go to the NRL and bring the club back into private ownership. We got to a point now where we were stable. The organisation could both financially get into a position where it could stabilise, plus our churn in players and the type of players had started to stabilise. And we had young kids that weren't going to Brisbane and they weren't going to Sydney more, that were starting to stay here as part of our pathway programs to come through and play for the coast. So it had got to a point where we went, okay, the organisation's now, we've got a sound base to it. What are we going to do going forward? Let's call out what we're going to achieve. So the next part was literally doing that. So going through who we are, how we behave, what we're doing, and what we're going to do over the next decade. And that's everything from high performance, our community, building assets through a high performance centre, and then ultimately on-field success in both genders, the NRL and in our NRLW aspirations as well. Our NRLW guys, they're training at the moment. They kick off in February. They are an extraordinary team. A lot of these women have been on the coast and played on the coast a large part of their lives. Karina Brown actually set the Gold Coast competition up. Karina's just turned 30. She set it up as a 21-year-old. And all they want to do is win for home. Like, they just want to wear that jersey. So the reason these guys are playing and the work they're putting in is so exciting for the organisation. But it's a true indication of there's a reason beyond a paycheck, and there's a reason beyond just the task at hand. And these guys are truly tribal, and this is their home, and they want to make that community as proud as they can, and they're going to work on it. So that's a really exciting program.
And for me, the key word that jumped out at me was unite. And it's really, as a CEO, you're in that spot, and I've spoken to others of how do you get footy ops working in the same direction, but then also how do you get the admin community, the back of house staff working in the same direction, like giving them that goal. Whether you work in membership, whether you work in the digital team, whether you're working in the high performance space. Yes, this is what we want to do, but here's the key pillars. Look at the board, look at the signage that's around the facility. This is why we're doing it. And whether you're, like you said, a player striving for NRLW or an NRL flag, everyone's driving that same direction. Do you feel like there's more purpose from both sides of the business now that you've laid that out?
Absolutely. And you articulated it very well. From a footy point of view, they take that purpose and they'll take the value set and the behaviours below that, and then that rolls into exactly what they're going to do individually in regard to what they're going to achieve collectively as a group, and then individually both as a high performance staff, coaching staff, and a play group. And then it's the same for my commercial guys. They basically they've taken their purpose, the value set, the behaviours underneath, the characteristics. Relentlessness is one of their values. So our commercial guys, they just they're relentless in their application of the market. They're relentless in the way they try to innovate and bring up new ideas. But service levels and relationship, so you basically, and then from a player group, relentlessness is about the way you defend, and it's around the way you train. It's the way you apply yourself in a particular area to rehab. So you can take these, and they're malleable. You basically take those individual concepts and you apply them in your own disciplines across the business. And then we meet together as groups, and we meet together as a whole staff. We meet together as an executive and as a team, and we speak to exactly how these are being applied and how they're being in each of those individual areas. And you can see that even though the task might be different because what they do individually is a different piece of work, it's all aligned with the same both purpose, cause, and direction. So it's been amazing.
Terrific. Footy clubs filled with some amazing people behind the scenes and amazing stories that sometimes don't get told. Tell us a little bit about Ethan, the Chief Morale Officer at the Titans.
Ethan joined us a few years ago. We've got a program that Renee Cohen, who's our community manager, general manager of community, has been basically building and growing for the last 4 years, which is a physical disability rugby league program and an intellectual disability rugby league program. There was an NDIS supplier 4 years ago that was running a small rugby league fan-based comp down in the Northern Rivers, and unfortunately the business became insolvent, and Renee ended up taking that little group over, and now that group's grown to 2 physical disability rugby league sides, 2 intellectual disability rugby league sides, both genders, and we're looking to actually take it out into a competition. The Warriors have a physical disability rugby league side. We hope to, COVID permitting, take the guys over, and they'll play as a curtain raiser over at Mount Smart Stadium at the back end of this year and play their side. And then there's a couple of sides in Sydney now, so we want to be able to get these guys and play them on the main stadia. We had 5 players come over from Wakeley back in 2020 before COVID really came through, and we played a curtain raiser for those guys, and it was broadcast back into Europe, which was fantastic. Ethan's come through with that group, and he's just he works every Wednesday in office, works in the community department, works across the floor. But what I did spot with Ethan when I came into the business, and we weren't travelling very well. The beauty about Ethan is Ethan walks in the room and everyone lights up, everyone smiles. He walks down the middle of the office, high-fiving people and asking what they're doing and what's on for the day, and he'll challenge the chairman and he'll challenge the coach, and you can see people just go through the roof. So we changed his title to the Chief Morale Officer, and he's gainfully employed now. And he's just an extraordinary person to have around, and he's been brilliant for the organisation. But beyond that program's been quite amazing for us as a group of people, particularly for the young athlete who's on a big contract. He's 23 years of age. He's basically flying nationally to play sport. He's got the best systems he could possibly get around him. But just for that kid to go and spend a half a day at the PDRL training and watch what some guys have to go through and some of the handicaps that they live with, but they play the sport for the love of it, from a mindfulness point of view, is really profound for our young players. So we benefit far greater than I'm sure than they do from us. But it's part of our DNA now, and it's something that we'll continue to invest in and grow over the coming years. Hopefully we get to a point where we've got a proper 8 to 9 week competition, so we can play these guys around different areas. But yeah, he's a superstar, Ethan.
Terrific. You did mention there a little bit about planning. How do you go about planning? The last 2 years, plans have been very flexible. It's been terrific to see, footy get played. How do you plan for the next, for this year ahead? Touch wood. Hopefully, it's not as affected, but it's obviously shifting all the time. The players have been in effectively a bubble for almost 2 years. I was chatting to someone in a digital department, and they said, "Yeah, I haven't spoken to a player in 2 years because I'm not allowed in the bubble." How has planning gone for the year ahead? And the contingencies that you've got to have in place that everyone's learned over the past 2 years.
Yeah, it's a great question. I think you just need to be, if there's anything we've learned, to be flexible and just adjust as quickly as you can. It's pretty hard to plan for some things that you just don't see coming, that are unplannable. even this year with Omicron, we had obviously the NRL had to get a testing regime in play to try and slow the spread of Omicron through our play rosters so that we could get a group back to training. We had 31 players go positive within the first 10 days of the outbreak, then out of 37. So we've nearly had our crew go through and come back and go back to training. We've basically, you put your architecture in place for the year, you know what the draw looks like. We have an assumption on what we're going to do from a ticket sales point of view. We're lucky in the fact that we've got some really good commercial support at the moment. So financially, we're not in a bad position. But our player group, we need to watch the way they recover. We're doing a lot of work with our high performance staff in regards to injury prevention, because we've got players that are getting big amounts of downtime because they're either at home, isolating, doing a little bit of training at home, or can't train to the full extent. So Sean, it's literally just what's in front. How do we adjust to it best we can, and have the ability to. You just need to be able to be as manual as you can. And we're lucky. We were quite fortunate in the first shutdowns as well. We're not one of the big clubs that had a huge resourcing pool, so it was probably easier for us to restructure, come back and change. And that's probably still the same to be said now, to be honest.
Terrific. Well, Steve, I want to finish off with the Sports Geek closing five. Do you remember the first sports event you ever attended?
Yeah, I went to a game of rugby league with my grandfather at Lane Park. I think I was 6 or 7. Yeah, it was fantastic. I can still remember walking up the stands, the old timber stands. It was just amazing.
Terrific. You would have been a lot of sports events in your time. Do you have a favourite food memory or a go-to food when you're at a football match?
I did like the rugby union menu at Amy Park in Melbourne. If there's anything about the rugby union crowd, they do know how to socialise, that's for sure. But I spend a lot of my time working around game days, so I'm usually got a packet of Allen's lollies in my hands or something like that. So as long as things are running really well, crowd's excited, and we're heading in the right direction, then I'll have a few snakes, mate, and just keep going.
Terrific. What's the first app you open in the morning?
It's a mix of either a couple of News Limited apps. It'll be my emails, and I'll go across and look at Insta. So depends on which one catches my eye first, I think.
Terrific. Is there someone that you follow or read, or a colleague that you look up to that the Sports Geek podcast listeners should follow, and why?
I've been doing quite a bit of work with a gentleman by the name of Gary Dooley, who's been helping shape our purpose, value set, and cultural work. And so he's just finished a book called Dynamic Teams. I found the work with Gary and the work off the back of his book is really instrumental in some of the work we've been able to do around the organisation culturally. So Gary's been really, really good. And then beyond that, I'm sort of always looking. I'll pick someone up for a while and listen to that, and then jump to someone from the States. But Gary's been my most recent had the most input.
Terrific. I just started about once a year I re-listen to Shoe Dog, Phil Knight's book. I find it very re-listenable, and terrific story of you don't realise how close Nike came to not being Nike. So it's a good listen, a good read.
I haven't heard it, mate, and I've heard about it. Thank you.
Shoe Dog. Yeah, like I've listened to it 4 or 5 times. It's like every now and again, if I want to rev up, I'll give it a listen on my walks. Lastly, what social media platform is your MVP? So what's your go-to, and then maybe you can also put your Titans hat on and say which one is the one that seems to be doing a lot of the heavy lifting for the Titans.
Yeah, Insta for both. Yeah, for the club and myself, it's quick, it's easy, it's visual. I'll go to quite a few of them, but Insta's probably the most consumed, I'd say, for both the club and for myself.
Yep, and that's definitely where trends are. I guess the multifaceted piece of you can be watching the stories to see what's happening behind the scenes. You can turn the brain off and just look at the feed. It's good. It gives you that dopamine, and you can then move on with your day. Lastly, if people want to reach out to you and say, "Hey, Steve, I listened to the podcast, really enjoyed it," what's the best platform? Where can they find you on the internet?
Insta's probably the easiest way to go, and/or LinkedIn. LinkedIn is the best way to go. Yep.
Yeah, terrific. Well, appreciate your time, Steve. Good luck for the season ahead. The good thing of having multiple teams, you're in the chances of winning titles in multiple with multiple teams. It's one of the advantages of having more teams in play. Appreciate your time, and best of luck for the year ahead.
Fantastic. Thanks, Sean. All the best.
Learn from the Sports Geek Amplify Season 1 cohort. Timo, Vlast, Stellar Algo, Ubi Park, and Zoof. For more, go to sportsgeekamplify.com.
Thanks again to Steve Mitchell. You can send him a tweet, Steve T. Mitchell on Twitter, or connect with him, Steve Mitchell, on LinkedIn. Very active, keeping everyone up to date with what is happening with the Gold Coast Titans. And best of luck, Steve, for this NRL season ahead. Before I get sort of discuss what I'm up to, don't forget, if you're looking to change careers, figure out what your next steps are, recover from what the 2020 and 2021 years have been, remember I have got office hours. You can book in time, sportsgeekhq.com/office hours to chat about what you're looking for in your career. Hopefully I can guide you in the right direction. And don't forget, Digital to Dollars is built to work for you and for your team. It is built around what are your objectives for digital. Are you looking for fan growth? Are you looking for digital engagement? Are you looking to deliver for sponsors? Are you looking to increase revenue? If you're nodding your head right now, that's exactly what Digital Dollars is built for. The process is very flexible in that we can dive into your audience, your content, your distribution, your destination. So what does your website look like? What does your app look like? Are you driving people there correctly? And then the piece from a commercialization point of view, what your value is, what are you charging your different social assets for, and then how would you wrap all that up in a nice pitch that sponsors will like. So please reach out. It works and can be adapted for, and has been adapted for a sporting body, a league, a team, a stadium, an athlete or a coach or a personality, or you could just take the first four. Know your audience, know your content, know your distribution, know your destination. It actually applies for just a regular old business. It doesn't have to be sport. I can change the word fans to customers, and it does work. So please let me know if there is a way that I can help sharpen the focus of your digital team, but also your commercial team, and get them working in lockstep. That's exactly what Digital Dollars is built for. What have I been up to since the last podcast? I think the last podcast was in December. Been working hard in our summer down here, but primarily working with the NFL and driving the NFL Australia channels and seeing terrific growth in audience, both from using a mix of organic content and paid, and applying a lot of the strategies that are in Digital to Dollars. That's exactly how we laid out the plan, and then the execution that fell out of that. And it's been a really good exercise in leveraging great content. There's nothing more compelling than the exciting plays and the videos and the photos that come out of the NFL. Having a lot of fun using tools like WSC. I've spoken to Aviv, the founder of WSC, before to be able to create highlights quickly, seamlessly for multiple platforms. If you want to understand how we've done it and how you can potentially do similar strategies with your channels, please reach out. And now we're starting to work with the LA Rams, and at this moment in time, when I'm recording this, they are preparing for a Super Bowl. So all the best to them. Hopefully, after you've listened to this, you watch them in the Super Bowl and they win. But it should be a terrific spectacle either way. Very lucky, similar to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, I should say, playing a Super Bowl on their home field at SoFi. So it'll be a really interesting match. You can follow NFL Australia if you want to see what I've been doing and what we're doing on the Instagram there, and LA Rams Australia is what we're doing from an Instagram point of view. So really looking forward to doing more stuff with the NFL in the coming year. Also, we did some work with applying digital dollar strategy with Greyhound Racing Victoria, which was really good and helping shape what they are looking to do over the next 6 to 12 to 18 months, and sort of make sure that their content and their social strategies are hitting the mark for new audiences that have found them over the past 18 months. And then the other thing that kept me busy in January was kicking off another year with my esports team Gravitas, signing some new coaching talent, again going with the double head coach, co-coaching role with Mystic and Sipe, and they're doing a great job teaching up a young squad. Really looking forward to seeing how they perform, and then hopefully also seeing people at a real-life event with DreamHack going to be in Melbourne, and looking forward to Gravitas participating in that. So that's it for me. Like I said, I am hoping to get out more episodes on a regular basis. So please, if you know someone who you think I should be talking to, please reach out to me, Sean at sportsgeekhq.com. If there's a way that I can help you, my goal hasn't changed for a couple of years. I still want to work on big problems, and thanks to a certain pandemic, there's still a lot of big problems out there. So you can book in a phone call at sportsgeekhq.com/phone call. If you want a 2-hour Pick My Brain session, either a one-on-one with some of your key digital staff or your executives wanting to know about key topics, whether it's digital, gaming, esports, those kind of things, those Pick My Brain sessions are available. You can book them in. It can be done individually or can be done with your whole team. Go to sportsgeekhq.com/Pick My Brain. That's it. I'm not going to do any more call outs. You should know them if you've listened to before. But as always, you can reach out to me at Sean Callanan on most platforms, or Sean at sportsgeekhq.com. Until next episode, which I hope will be very soon. My name is Sean Callanan, and you've been listening to Sports Geek.
We'd love your support on our Patreon campaign. Go to sportsgeekhq.com/Patreon. Have you listened to the Sports Geek Amplify series? Go to sportsgeekamplify.com to listen.